Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us wherever you may be tonight. And for those of you who joined us here tonight, welcome in person. Tonight is our second Corner Convo. A couple weeks ago, we had one with Mary Calorio, Killingly Town Manager. It was enlightening and fascinating. And tonight, we have one of Westfield's own, Missy Myers, who is COO of Generations Healthcare and the president of Putnam Rotary. So when we talk about somebody who is knee-deep in community efforts, Missy is one of those. And I'm really excited to hear what she has got to say. So let's jump in. Missy, where are you from originally? Where'd you come from?
I came
What's
from
the story?
here. I came from here. I grew up in Killingly, and I graduated from Killingly High School. So I am from here, and left Killingly for a while, went to college, moved to different places around Connecticut, and eventually landed back in the area. And my son graduated from Killingly, so none of that was planned. It's just what happened. So I am homegrown for sure.
That's nice. And you've really had a passion about taking care of our community. Now, was that something that followed you wherever you'd gone, or was that something that when you came back here and saw home again in a different light, maybe it inspired you in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely always was driven to service. When I grew up, we had a lot of illness and whatnot in our house, so I was always taking care of someone. And then when I went to college, it was for social work. So I always intended to take care of other people. And I didn't really get into volunteerism too much through college and my early adulthood, but then pretty soon into my 30s, I just felt like it was something I should be extending myself to do. Because I had a young child, I was taking care of him, but I felt like I should be doing more, even though the work I was doing was service-oriented. It's just always been something I've been interested in, and once you're back in your home area, it's so much easier because you care about it. You have a relationship with the area, so you feel just a natural desire to give back, and so that's always been part of my life.
So you went to school for social work and ended up, I think, getting a master's in public health.
Health administration.
Health administration. So
Yep.
tell me about that transition.
Yeah.
Like they're definitely connected.
They are through social medicine, I guess is the phrase. So I went to college for social work. I was going to be either a school social worker or a DCF worker. And because I was going to save all the kids of the world for various reasons.
Noble cause.
And so I went to college for that and did a couple internships with DCF and as a school social worker that I did really well, but they were just emotionally took a toll. And so I knew I need to do work like this, but I can't do this particular work. It's just going to drain me too much emotionally. So I leaned towards social medicine. And after college, I went to work at Planned Parenthood. And I was there for a while. I believed in the mission of access to care. It seemed to fit my desire to help people because they served people very similar to where I work now, regardless of your ability to pay and whatnot. So I found that very comfortable. And I stayed there for a while. I became an HIV counselor there. I was one of the first ones in Connecticut, actually. And then from there, I went to Generations. At the time, it was called Health First. And then it had a name change, and it became Generations. And so I moved over there as a medical case manager and grew up from there. And eventually went back to school to get my master's in health administration as I got into management and whatnot.
And so you've been in Generations for a number of
27
years now, and you must know the entire in and out because you really kind of started not at the bottom, but like you've worked your way up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I've worked in so many different realms there, and I've had so many opportunities to do things I never would have imagined. I've done a lot of the different jobs. I've done clinical, administrative, et cetera. But as I moved up and took on more responsibility, I got to do things I never would have thought. I built buildings. I was given the responsibility to design and build buildings. I didn't go to school for engineering, but the CEO believed I could do it, and I learned how to do it. And so now I've renovated and built several buildings for Generations. I've implemented services, started new services, our HIV services, homeless services, the dental van I designed and got on the road. Like, there's just so many things that I was given the opportunity to do that I never would have imagined going into social work or social medicine. And so now I'm in public health, and I've got to do a lot of different things and work with a lot of different partners, which I love. And Generation serves a whole swath of Eastern Connecticut because of all our sites. So I get to work with a lot of different towns, a lot of different people. And so I've been able to build up a lot of relationships over time, and I just love that.
So it's no secret that there's a lot of need in our community, deep need.
Absolutely.
That was one of the things I first noticed when I moved here, is that it's a fiercely generous area, but it's fiercely generous.
There's a reason.
Because there's deep need. The mills left, nothing really came back in their stead, and there's a lot of hardship. How do you, as somebody who has a surprising amount of power to make a difference, discern which comes first? There's so much. How do you pick one over the other, even in the realm of health? Yeah,
there is so much. But what we're really good at in our area is diversifying. So there are different strengths and different resources. We don't all need to compete with each other. And so there are social service agencies that can take on food access and shelter and things like that. We get to take on access to health care. Somebody else is, hopefully working on housing, education. We have a great community college in our area that we're really fortunate to have. So there are different partners who focus in different areas, and that's how you get to choose your lane and be good at it. And for healthcare, we look at data, and that doesn't sound sexy, but you have to prove what funding you need to get the resources. You have to look at how to quantify things and show the need. And in healthcare, it's about access. That's our mission at Generations. And so we look at where are the pockets and where are they accessing care, and do we need to bring care to them? One of the things we are looking at this year is launching a new mobile unit that will take out medical as well as dental out into the rural areas and whatnot, because a lot of people don't have access to transportation. It's one of the #1 problems in our area throughout the northeast corner. Our transit district is great. It does what it can do, but we don't have major public transportation. We don't even have reliable Uber in our area. So people can't just get up and go to a doctor's appointment or a grocery store or a pharmacy for their medications. So those are a struggle. And so we work at Generations and with our partners to go after resources and bring them into the area, like big grants, et cetera, so that we can hopefully support what the needs are. And transportation helps people access all of the resources, so that's the #1 thing.
What's the region that Generation serves?
So we have sites in Putnam, Killingly, Norwich, and Willimantic. And our service area is all of those areas and all of the small towns that surround them. So we go all the way from the Massachusetts line down to just below Norwich, and then all the way over to Columbia area to the Rhode Island line. And we have people that come to us from Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
So they don't have to be Connecticut residents to benefit from the services?
They don't have, it doesn't matter where they live to come to us.
So thinking about, I know that there's a much broader definition of quiet corner than what's in my head. In my head, quiet corner is the 395 corridor down to like Plainfield. But given the experience of what you serve, what unique challenges do you think our town here of Killingly and Putnam, what are they facing in the context of that broader community?
So #1 is always transportation. I would always say that because that is the conduit to all other things. So if you don't have that, you don't have a lot of other things. It's hard to get daycare. It's hard to get a job. It's hard to get health. It's so many things. So transportation is #1, 2, and 3. But besides that, in our area, I think part of the challenges are just change. And we've had major employers come and go, like you were referring to many years ago, mills shut down and emptied, and that changed the culture, changed the nature of this corner. And folks have a hard time with change and to transition. There is a community college here that not everybody takes advantage of, but it would help people face change and change careers when big employers do shut down and whatnot. But there's not a lot of that in this area. And so, there is this school, but not everyone accesses it. And I think part of evolution is being able to accept change and move on. And that's hard in small towns because you like how your town is. You like the fact that your grocer and your mailman and your reverend and whatnot. And so you hold on to that in this area. And it's one of the things we treasure in the quiet corner. We do know so many people in the area because if you've been here a while. But then that also might make you resistant to change and growth. So there's a balance there to be had. The other thing is, in this area, I feel that, especially in the last few years, that there's so much media attention on the negatives that have occurred. And our towns have faced a lot of loss. They've faced tragedies. They suffered the pandemic just like the cities did. We weren't an exception to that. And to have the media focus on what is wrong or missing or divided does not help a small town because it is a small town. There aren't many places to run and hide. And you're going to face the people that are part of those divisions or those conflicts. And so having the media attention on so many negative occurrences, incidents, long-term issues, brings the whole area down. It reduces your sense of optimism and your hope. And I think that our hope is the biggest strength that any community can have. And to have it diminished just because someone decided to shine a light on particular issues is really a disservice. Because the quiet corner, if you were to ask me, how would you describe it? I would say hardy. We are strong and in this corner, and we've been through a lot. Some of our towns have had unimaginable loss, and we've dealt with it. We've dealt with a flood in Putnam, right? The Great Flood of '55 defined this area for so long, and there have been big employers to leave. Like, there's been a lot of loss, but we're hardy. We survive, we endure, and we have hope. And then media comes along or whatever, rumor mongering, et cetera, and focuses on the negative and sucks the hope out of the room. And I think that's a disservice. I think this corner knows how to take care of its own and can shine a light on positive things. We're lucky that we have a local radio station. Gary O does a great job trying to focus on positives and getting the news out on the positives. And, we have good leaders in the area like yourself, and you had Mary Colario and other folks in the area who try to focus on the positive. We have civic organizations that do so much. Our business associations are so productive and progressive, and our economic development offices, like, there's a lot of good people trying to do a lot of good things. If the attention was spent just on those things, imagine the hope that would be contagious in this area and what this area could achieve, as opposed to the draining and the negativity of the attention that is on what divides us.
There has been a lot of divisions, and I'll say one of the things I'm the most proud about Westfield is, I will jokingly say it, but I mean it, we're a solidly purple church. We have people who are on both sides of the political divide, and the Sunday after President Trump was elected, we had people who were on the verge of literal mental breakdowns.
Yeah, we did.
And people who could barely keep themselves from dancing in the aisles, and still they showed up together that Sunday, and we sang together, and we worshiped God together, and we reminded ourselves that there was something more important to us than that. And that was really beautiful, and we made it through that too. But the last couple years have no doubt been a division, and particularly around the pandemic and how to handle the pandemic. We experienced that in churches in the area about whether or not to stay open or to close, or to what degree. And I imagine that was a lot of pressure for you as a health leader in our community, trying to keep people safe, but also help life go on in ways that wouldn't devastate people's personal finances and lives. What was that like, having that to work through? Yeah,
there was a lot of pressure. People have strong opinions, and it was very personal. The pandemic became very personal in a lot of ways. People certainly grieved folks they lost. That's very personal. People felt threatened to just walk outside their door. That feels very personal. Hearing your rights, what you feel are your rights, being curtailed feels very personal. Businesses shutting down, livelihoods ruined because of the restrictions and the lack of people using your service. Very personal. It was all very personal. And it was large entities making decisions on a very personal nature. And something as intimate as whether you can breathe near someone, whether you can hug someone or not. Everyone thinks of over the last year, I can hug you, right? Why would that feel so extraordinary? But it's because of what we went through. Those personal things cause such deep feelings, and fear and anxiety is a very strong driver. Whether it's fear of losing your rights, fear of losing your business, losing your life, losing your loved ones, that is an exceptionally strong emotion. And to lead through that meant respecting that whoever you're talking to or about or is listening could be fearing for their life, could be fearing for their loved ones' lives, their business, their children, their mother, their father, whomever. You had to always just keep that in mind. And, and I would have to go on air and talk about, okay, we're going to be doing testing, or we want you all to wash your hands and wear your masks and all of that, and get a lot of flack about, it's a hoax and all this. As I knew people to die of COVID, to be very ill with COVID. And I've had COVID. I was pretty sick.
I just did a burial last week for someone who died. Still here from COVID.
It kills. It killed. And so when you knew someone who did that, to then have someone tell you it's not real, that's pretty personal. But you have to respect that every human has their own experience and makes their own decisions, has their own opinions. And my job was to focus on our mission and get the information out, to be sincere and honest and factual, and to not get into opinions. My opinion did not matter. What was important is that true information get out so that people could make good decisions. And of course I was going to take flack. It was a big deal. It was important to people, whether I agreed with what they believed or not. It was important. And
did you ever,
did
that flack ever turn into personal attacks for you?
I have some people I love who absolutely do not believe in any of it and are actively promoting concepts that are completely against my public health work. Very close to me people. And we just have to agree to disagree, because we're humans. We make our own decisions. We have our own opinions. We base our decisions and our opinions on whatever we decide they're based on. And when I would be asked, well, where do you get your information? I didn't understand the virus when it first came out, and it scared the bejeebas out of me. And so I read and read and read about it to understand it, because if I'm going to go out and tell people what they should or shouldn't be doing because of my job, first of all, I better believe in what I'm saying. I'm not going to make it up. So I read so that I would understand and decide, do I feel like this is factual? Are we doing the right thing? I did. I read what I could find from reliable sources, what I felt were reliable sources, and I did what I could. But I'm not going to convince someone who has a different opinion, regardless of how close I am to them. And I don't think it's my job on earth. I can do what I can about sharing my opinions or what I feel are facts, but it's not my job to convince someone that their belief is wrong or their opinion is not as valuable. That's just hurtful. And so if they don't want the information, then they don't need to take it.
One of the things
but it's hard. It's hard.
One of the things that mantras has gotten me through the last couple years has been this one: nobody is all one thing or the other.
No.
And we've fallen into the pit of making people all one thing or the other. Mother Teresa once said, if we have no peace, it is because we've forgotten that we belong to each other. Ugh. And leave it to Mother Damn Teresa to sum it up. But there it is. But nobody's all one thing or the other. And how easy it is, even for us who know that, to default to that. I mean, heck, you're on the road and somebody's driving a fool, and you think, man, they're a jerk. Who's to say that they're not rushing somewhere they need to go?
Right.
And yet, it's just so easy to make the us and them.
And I think that sums up the last few years.
Yeah.
It all started before the pandemic as far as division in our country. And it is so easy to just put someone in a box and say, I've got you. I know all about you.
Easy and easier.
And I don't need to value you. I'm going to put you over there, and none of that's going to matter. Period. And I'm better because I've put you in a box and I've labeled you, and et cetera. What does that serve for anybody? What does that do? What does division help? What do you accomplish with that? And I just don't. I understand it. I know why people do it.
And still, though,
I just don't agree
there
with
are times when it's time to take a stand. And
Sure.
that is the complicated thing, particularly with situations like the pandemic,
Yeah.
of like, we can agree to disagree, and still, for instance, as a leader of a church,
Yep.
we had to take a stand to protect the most vulnerable around us because we believe that's a prerogative of our faith and
Well,
imperative.
and when you have responsibilities, you have to make decisions.
Right.
You are responsible for people. You need to take care of them. You need to make decisions the best you can to take care of them. That's your responsibility. You've chosen that responsibility and you believe in it, and so you're going to make decisions the best you can.
So there's another health crisis on the horizon that's made the news, the monkeypox outbreak, which seems to have tamped down a little bit recently in terms of like what we see on TV and whatever.
In the media.
What perception do you have of that coming to our quiet corner? What are the ways that people can protect themselves? What should they really be worried about or not? We've definitely not hit pandemic stage on it.
No.
Not remotely on that
not
front.
But not in the numbers, no. But, you know, it is contagious. And people that are at risk, and I would just encourage people to go get factual information. As always, I would say go to the CDC and look at the information. What are your risks? Do you fall in the risk categories? If you do, then seek out the vaccine. That would be as a public health person, what my recommendation would be, because it can make people very, very ill. And depending on your own health status, you might be more susceptible to serious illness.
Does Generations have the vaccine?
We are about to get it. We don't have it yet.
So some of your earliest work was in HIV counseling.
Yes.
And we're seeing, so monkeypox, people who are particularly susceptible to monkeypox are men who have sex with men.
Yep.
And we're beginning to see some of the same behavior that launched in the late 80s when HIV became what it became, and people didn't understand it, and they began to target communities and blame communities.
Yeah.
Do you see those parallels happening? And we're also not in the 80s anymore.
No, we're not. And
Culture has shifted. Context has shifted.
one can hope. One can hope. So we're not seeing a lot of the pushback. You shouldn't be worrying about that. It's just for them. It's not for most people. Why, it's not a big deal, et cetera. We're not really getting any of that. We are getting a lot of calls from people who are worried and want the vaccine or want to know, I have a red bump. Is there any way that this could be monkeypox? What do I need to be watching for? And that lack of information causes the fear-mongering and the just misinterpretations. And, excuse me, that goes both ways. I could be at risk and I have a red bump, but I'm not going to worry about it. Or I'm just going to assume it's all of those folks, and I don't need to worry about it. But we haven't gotten a lot of pushback on monkeypox yet. We have had a lot of calls for help in trying to understand the symptoms. Could I have been exposed? The fairs. People are asking, should I not really be walking next to people at the fair? Well, we don't need to go that far, but people that are of high risk categories should be concerned about what they're doing and if they're getting vaccinated or not. The vaccine right now, the nearest place that it's available is Planned Parenthood in Willimantic, and then Norwich. And then hopefully some
So there's not even availability in our quiet corner.
Not yet. We will hopefully have it very soon.
Wow.
And we'll promote that when we do.
How many employees are at Generations
We have about 235.
across campuses and
Yep,
sites?
across all the sites. Yeah. Yep.
So in our quiet corner, you've already done this a little bit, but let's talk about it some more. How would you sum up the people? You said the word hardy.
Yeah.
And I would say hardy and hardy,
So-
as in like really like they'll like endure, the stock that endures, and they're generous and like taking care of each other.
So
and
that's
filling.
why I say hardy. Hardy in that this corner endures a lot. But also the heartful. So, I think about how the town showed up for the Killingly High School parade when the guys won the football, championship.
This is the most recent time, particularly.
Yeah,
Yep.
and show up in so many ways for tragedies that happen. We have fires and people are there helping. We have great volunteerism in our corner, extraordinary volunteerism in our corner. I think there's just so much caring in our community. We're really fortunate with all the service organizations and volunteers and everything. So I think the heart is there. And when there are tragedies, people pour out to wrap their arms around whatever has occurred or whoever has suffered. So there is that compassionate side to our quiet corner, and it does have a big heart. And we talk about taking care of the heart of Killingly and whatnot, but we're not the only ones. Like there's a lot of caring groups and individuals who generously donate to so many things. This is an extraordinarily generous corner of the state. So I feel like the heart beats really strong in this corner as far as taking care of, and then the hardiness is the endurance over time, because that's what I've just seen over my lifetime. And I'm in my 50s. I've been here a while. I've been in and out, but mostly in the area. And it was like this when I was young. People took care of, despite the division stuff. And that's why I wish the attention wasn't on it, because there's so much more about the compassion and the taking care of. And I wish it got more light of day.
Mm-hmm. So often people here will say, we're not the quiet corner, we're the forgotten corner. And I'm sure you deal with a whole lot of government realities and entities trying to get funding.
Yep.
How do you perceive that?
I think that there are a lot of individuals and organizations who have put in a great amount of energy to get attention for this corner. People are very aggressive about getting in front of their legislators and funding sources and foundations and whatnot to bring resources to draw attention to what needs attention in this area. Folks will have different opinions about whether our legislators are effective or not. That's just the way it goes. If you're not in favor of them, don't vote for them. That's your civic duty. But I think if you can get the right people out front and getting their voice heard, we don't get forgotten. You do get resources brought to the area. It's probably never going to be what anyone would want, the ideal of take care of every problem. But I do think there's more being brought to this corner than there used to be. Part of that is because we are rural, and so there are rural resources that we have brought to this area, or other organizations have, or employers have, because we're rural. And so there's certain things we're eligible for that cities are not eligible for. And so I think those are good things. Forgotten is subjective. If there's certainly not every single problem taken care of. We don't have probably the size of the police force everybody wants. I think Mary spoke about that. But they're working on it. They're working on it. And that's usually what you can say about most things.
And isn't that
They're
true about our
working on
corner?
it.
People are working on it.
They're working on it.
Folks are showing up. When
Yep.
the cards are down, they show up. And
It's
that's
like
a gift.
businesses downtown Killingly, the Killingly Business Association and the Chamber. Everyone's working on it, trying to bring more people here the way it used to be when I was young. And people are working on it. And if you think it's forgotten, then get working on it. Jump in. How can you help?
Well, let's work on it. So you said transportation is the number one thing that you would fix.
Yeah.
Say we had a limitless budget. What would you do?
Daycare. That'd be the next thing, daycare.
Yeah.
So right now we're having the Great Resignation, it's called. People aren't applying for jobs. We have so many job openings, and almost every organization I know or business cannot staff. But part of it is also daycares. And we did lose some daycare with the pandemic, so that was unfortunate. But there's never enough for families so that they can go to work. So daycare, pre-K, early education resources, access to higher ed. Education is the number one path out of poverty, which unfortunately we have in our area. And we have QVCC, which is phenomenal. And fortunately, most students can go there without cost because of their foundation. But there should be other options too. And students from this area want to go to other colleges and whatnot. Higher ed is so expensive, but it is the best way out of poverty. And unfortunately, our corner has quite a bit of it.
So much of what you do through Putnam Rotary, your volunteerism, your work is showing up for people. When is one time that somebody showed up for you?
Oh my gosh.
Not to get too personal. I'm not telling you to go like super deep, but
I would just, it's all the time. So because I'm sitting here, I'm going to use Westfield, which is going to sound, like pandering, but it's just what strikes me. So I went through a major loss a few years back, and I was untethered, just kind of rolling from day to day. And probably anyone who's lost the person that they share their life with can relate to this, or someone they love. You feel ungrounded, like you're just not of this earth. You're just kind of floating from day to day. And then I came to Westfield. I had friends who came here, and this could be true for anybody, but you find somewhere where you feel like you're home, and you start to have the pieces come back together little bit by little bit and fill the hole that's going on. And people showed up for me. They didn't know they were at first, and then they were intentionally showing up for me by talking to me a little bit each week. They could probably see it first. I had my walls up, just trying to survive. But they reached out, and they just connected. And after a while, it was a lot of people trying to connect, and that makes you feel like you're part of something. And so they showed up for me, not even knowing that they needed to show up for me, but they did. And that's part of what I think is so important in just everyday life. How do you show up for other people? How do you connect? How do you care about what's going on for them? I mean, it's part of why I do the work I do and volunteer. But that happened for me, and I would hope that people find opportunities to do the same. How can you show up for someone else? Even if it's 5 minutes, buy coffee for the guy behind you in Dunkin' Donuts line. Like there's kindness that can happen, and it's the connective tissue that makes the world better. And that sounds hokey, but I really believe in that.
And it's a practice.
It's
something that
it's part
some
of your
days you will
day-to-day.
totally screw up and miss out on, and some days you'll excel at. But like anything that you have to practice, you don't get better at it unless you practice it.
Yeah, and you get more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's actually just as easy as, not me, it's just as easy to be kind for just a minute.
So we're coming in for Landon here. What haven't we talked about that you really want to say to folks?
I recently saw, it's going to sound silly, but there was a town event that got canceled, and there was some hubbub about that. And I get it. People had expectations, and they were looking forward to it and whatnot. I'm not going to get into specifics. But there was a lot of flack, and people are keyboard warriors, and I get it on the social media. It's easy to sit back and just kind of type negative comments and whatnot. But I would just say, instead of taking that easy route, for just 5 minutes, think about, have you volunteered? Have you donated? Have you helped in some way? Did you contribute to this event or any other event? There are so many groups trying to make our area better and more enjoyable and more fulfilling and more entertaining and more family friendly and all kinds of things. Are you part of it? Are you part of it in any way? Do you extend yourself in any way, even if it's to the people in your world or your community at large? Do you try? Do you step outside of your box for a little while and give of yourself? Even if it's once a year, do you try? Because those people doing that, taking those efforts, are what lead us down the path of having a better community. Everybody being part of the community, pitching in. If everybody volunteered once, what you get back from volunteering is so much bigger than the time you spent doing it. And it's something obviously I believe in, but I would just say it would change the tone of the community conversation. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
I think that's really insightful about the tone
Tone.
of what conversations are. Like,
It's your culture.
we need to start with giving people the benefit of the doubt. That would go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Just assuming that people are trying
Right.
and trying their best
Yep.
and trying to do the right thing or a good thing.
Yep.
And be continuing the conversation from that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see how can you be part of that conversation?
So I want to give the opportunity to some of the folks who are here. If you have any questions or things you'd like to share with Missy, here's your time. No pressure, but I don't want to miss out if you do. Anything you got? No? No? I'm doing a kick-ass job, aren't I? Yeah, totally. Narrating this. Well, Missy, thank you so much for your time here with us. And thank you for joining us. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. You can come find us at the Woodstock Fair. Look for the steeple. If you buy a pickle, you can ring our bell. There's a working
Really,
bell
you
there.
can.
It's one of our biggest fundraisers of the year that helps us keep doing things like this and many other ways that we take care of our community. Like Missy said, we pride ourselves on caring for the heart of Killingley and beyond. We've been doing it for more than 300 years. No intention of stopping now, and honored to partner with all sorts of community organizations in doing just that. So with that, we'll say good night, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining us.